Welcome back to the next part. Following up, continuing at our discussions of plagiarism. Hopefully, the first part resonated with you and you've taken a look at some of the resources that are in the folder labeled plagiarism under assignments, and it is starting to come together for you. If you reviewed the transcript while you were watching the video, it's a very helpful way of retaining information. This particular section, I'm going to talk in more specificity about types of plagiarism. And again, there are things that you've seen and done. This is my 18th year of community college instruction. It is my 23rd year of teaching altogether. And yeah, I've seen this, and interestingly, there are types that I've probably participated in unknowingly, but knowledge or lack of knowledge of the law is not an excuse for intellectual dishonesty. And that's where I'm trying to move toward, and that's where I'm trying to help you move toward. 5 types of plagiarism. As I go over these, I simply want you to ask yourself the question: have you ever done this? Do you see yourself somewhere within this dialogue? Where is the line between legitimate academic research and plagiarism? And the challenge is that a lot of people might not know. And I hope that you know by the end of this presentation. I hope the goal is to say, wow, I can't do that. No, you can't do that. We're not going backwards. We're not reusing things that we've turned in for a grade for other classes. Yes, that's considered intellectual dishonesty. We'll talk about that. Some of these examples that I'm using are going to be more clear than other examples. Some of them are legitimately academic gray area, and let's start the dialogue and talk about it. Please talk about these things with your colleagues and peers in your group discussions, but let's go forward and do this the right way. Number one, and I'm using information from turnitin.com. Again, want to be completely clear where I got this information. I put together some intellectual examples, but I think that their outline of 5 types of plagiarism and helping you see yourself in them can be very, very instructional. So, with complete permission, Turnitin allows free distribution of this particular document that I use and nonprofit use. I'm not making any money on this in educational settings, which is the only reason that we're together. First, the ghostwriter. What is a ghostwriter? Literally turns in somebody else's work word for word as their own. I think we can all see that that's going to be on the foul side of the plagiarism line. We don't do that. You don't take somebody else's hard work and put your name on it and say it's your own. You'd never get away with it if it was a movie and you just took the director's name off and put it on The Godfather, starring Derrick Payne, directed by Derrick Payne, written by Derrick Payne. Wouldn't work. You wouldn't do that with a piece of music without paying the original artist that wrote and performed and produced that music. Maybe you don't get paid for covering somebody else's song, but the reality is that there is compensation because it's generating money, and that compensation goes to the person who created it, not to the person who quotes reimagined it. We don't reimagine in academic and intellectual settings. Um, this is why, and I've mentioned this in class, there is a difference between a student saying 3,512 people died of diabetes related symptoms in Texas in September 2021. Hard stop. No quotation marks, no citation, no according to. In a verbal speech, I need to hear according to where this information came from. That's critically important because when you say 3,512 students died of diabetes related symptoms and you don't make it a point to say where you got that information from, number one, your information is suspect. Depending on where that information came from, I can jump all over it and tear it apart, and you probably don't want that in your life. But bigger than that, somebody actually did go out and do the work to get that information. And then when they finish with it, you just stole it and put your name on top of it. Not cool. Not what we've done. Not what we're going to do going forward at any point. How do you know that it was 3,512 if you didn't do the work yourself? How do you know it wasn't 3,543 or 3,201? How do you know that or 6? How do you know that that information has credibility to the person that is watching and observing? Make sure that you are carefully monitoring everything that you should be doing and everything that you're going to be doing as relates to quoting a specific statistic. When you say without any attribution, without any according to statements, 3,512 people died of diabetes. That means you walked around to every hospital and morgue in the state of Texas with a clipboard and asked questions and asked questions again and asked a question when you were done asking a question. I don't think you did that. I don't think you had the time and energy to do it. I don't think you had the technical wherewithal to do it. However, somebody did do it, and you're taking credit for their hard work after they did it. You wouldn't like it if it was you. I hope you see the difference. That's number one. Number two, the photocopy. The writer copies significant portions of text straight from a single source without attribution. Again, it's wrong. Don't do it. Do I get assignments every day that I know off the top are written in a completely different academic and intellectual voice with terminology that's sitting in front of you as an instructor? I've never heard you or anybody your age or in your particular academic group use. These are things that people that have been writing about nuclear science for 40 years use in conversational terms. And because it's taken out of that conversational context, I'm relatively sure that it came from somewhere. And then I immediately start looking for attribution. And I don't get it. But again, most of us, I think, would see, just like a ghostwriter, would see that as a academic problem of taking credit for somebody's intellectual property. People don't freely give up what they worked hard to get. And that's very, very true in terms of a photocopier or ghostwriter. Again, don't do it. The potluck paper. It's been a long time teaching, and I've gotten a million of these. And I confess to, as a student, creating several of these, not realizing that my academic reputation was what I was handing in to the teacher. What would I consider a potluck paper? People try to disguise plagiarism because you know it's wrong. People try to disguise plagiarism by copying things from several different documents. I'll take a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and it won't be enough to be recognizable, but I will slap it all together and it'll all make sense, and everybody will think that I'm a great student and I've created this intellectual dialogue completely on my own without taking parts and chunks of other people's work. Well, the reality is, by the way that it's stitched together, the trained eye can tell that this work has come from several different places. And it doesn't matter that it comes from several different places. My job is to immediately turn to the works cited page and see which parts came from where. And if I can't track that backward accurately, then there's going to be some difficulty. Think about it this way. And again, I try to make examples to make sense for you. It becomes a disjointed mess because you have taken pieces of people's work that never talked to each other, never worked together. You just took four different pieces and made a quilt, and it's ugly. And we don't want to do that. We don't want to put that pressure on anybody at any given point in time. Um, the potluck presentation is always complicated because many times you don't even realize that these two people are saying opposite things in the same presentation, and now we don't know what to believe. Because of climate change, the earth is getting warmer. Because of climate change, the earth is getting colder. I've seen those in the same presentation. So, did you write this and come up with different ideas out of your head? Or did, in borrowing, you not give a real clear roadmap of what you were doing? And it was a lot of big words, so it must be important and it looks like it would work for college. No, just tell your truth. Be true to yourself, be true to your ideas. If you were having a potluck dinner, this is the example that I would use, and you never told your friends who were coming to the dinner what to bring, what are the odds that you would get a comprehensive, delicious meal without people saying who's bringing what? What you're probably going to get is six people that bring paper towels or paper plates, one person that brings fruit punch, and no actual food, right? Because you didn't tell them what to bring. You have to specifically tell people what to bring to the table. And if you're going to go through all the trouble to organize other people's work and clip and merge, why not just make your own work, right? Don't go through all the extra trouble. Communicate what it is that people need to be putting forward. Have your ideas that you want to make in mind up front. Don't expect people to show up at a potluck dinner and, wow, I didn't realize that I had to meet the dietary needs. I brought enough food for three people and there's 15 people here. Um, You're not going to get a good meal that way. You're not going to get a good paper by ripping parts out of other published dialogue and making it into one dialogue. Now, the thing is that may have been what you've done every day before you watched this video and decided that that was sufficient academically. It's not. Let's go to the fourth part of this. The poor disguise. Although the writer has retained the essential concepts of the source, he or she has altered the paper's appearance slightly by changing keywords and phrases. I've seen people change a font, change of font size, to cut and paste different documents together and make it look like it's not acceptable under any academic sources. So that's four. The first one being that we don't want you to be the ghostwriter. The second, we don't want you to be the photocopy. The third one, we don't want you to be the potluck paper. The fourth one, we don't want you to be the poor disguise. And the ultimate one, and this is one that I had to learn myself, and it took a while to figure out why this was a thing, is there is such a thing as stealing from yourself. There's such a thing as self sabotage. There's such a thing as self plagiarism. Know that paper that you wrote in the 10th grade is not acceptable for the purposes of academic discourse 3 years later. It's just not going to work. Write a new paper. Why? Because what I'm asking you to do is write a new paper. Part of the intangibles of what I'm asking you to do is that you not go on a flash drive on an old laptop and give me a microwave paper heated up, hand it to me, and that's good, because there's no growth involved in that. And that's problematic. That's very, very challenging when there's no growth involved in it. Scientific knowledge of the world doubles itself very frequently. Intellectual positions change. We know more about the world than we did, um, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. So the paper that you wrote 2 years ago may have every idea in it discredited by now. We simply know more about it. What if you had written a paper about COVID-19 3 years ago? What do we know about COVID has changed and grown tremendously. So ideas that we held sacrosanct 3 years ago, when there was no real widespread outbreak of COVID, is not something that's going to pass as permissible academic research. And I hope you understand it that way. Don't steal from yourself. Just give me a new paper. My assumption when you give me a paper is that you are giving me a unique, individual, original assignment that has never been graded by anybody else. That's my unspoken assumption. And I don't want something that's been turned into somebody else, because their assessment of it may be different than mine. The actual content may have changed. And what I'm asking you to do is part of your intellectual growth going forward. So there's no reason to steal an old paper from yourself other than it's not a good idea. And I get people that I tell that, they try to turn in their assignments and they want this assignment reviewed, and I want to do it on this topic. And I can tell that you want to do it on this topic because you're being intellectually lazy and you don't want to do anything new. And I've already got all this research and I put it together in the 10th grade and I want to keep doing the same thing over and over and over. And I'm not interested. I want to see where you're at and I want to evaluate what I've taught you and not what somebody else taught you. Knowledge, scientific and technical knowledge, grows at an astronomical rate of speed, and you can only embarrass yourself by cutting corners and avoiding work. It shows up, and I don't want it to show up for you in an unfortunate way. Again, so that's 5 different ways that we're going to talk about plagiarism. And I have more information for you in subsequent documents that I hope will make sense. But the information about these 5 ways comes from Turnitin.com and Research Resources. And they publish this for use in educational settings. And the actual document is going to be in the folder. Thank you.